They erased me from the family calendar until I sent the company invite. It wasn't just a date, it was absence, carved in ink. I stood in Mom's kitchen, pretending to sip coffee, while my eyes locked on the familiar whiteboard, the one she proudly called our family brain. Every name was there. Birthdays, anniversaries, dinners, every name but mine. At first, I thought it was an accident. Maybe the marker ran out. Maybe she just forgot. But then I looked closer. Emily's book club, Dad's golf weekend, even the dog's vet appointment were written in perfectly neat handwriting. Mine was missing again. The calendar had always been her domain. Growing up, it ruled everything. School events, holidays, curfews, it dictated who mattered and when. But now, as a 32-year-old woman standing there with no trace of herself in her own family's timeline, I realized it wasn't just a mistake, it was a message. I placed my mug down and stared a little longer. No birthday. No Rachel home from work trip, not even a simple call Rachel, just blankness where I was supposed to be. I swallowed the sting. I didn't ask. I already knew what she'd say. You're always so busy, honey. That's what she'd say, that I travel too much, work too much, call too little. She'd turn the omission into my fault, like she always did. But this wasn't about absence. It was about invisibility and control. The first time she forgot my birthday, I was 13, she swore it was the calendar's fault. I didn't flip the page, she laughed. That was the first time I felt like a shadow in my own home. I never told anyone how that felt. That calendar followed us from house to house, always on the fridge, always updated, always excluding me in subtle ways. Emily's achievements were written in gold marker. Mine, rarely mentioned. Once, I wrote my own name in. She erased it the next day. I stopped being a daughter and became a footnote that morning. Standing in her kitchen again, I saw it clearly. She had rewritten the family story, one where I didn't exist unless I showed up to serve, bring a dish, take a photo, pay a bill. I didn't make a scene. I just nodded politely, picked up my phone, and scrolled through my inbox like it didn't matter. But something cracked inside, not a break, a shift. I had spent a lifetime waiting to be written in, waiting to matter, to be counted. That day, I stopped waiting. I would write myself into something bigger and I would send it to them in ink they couldn't erase. Our family calendar was more than a tool. It was a hierarchy, a silent scoreboard of who mattered and when. Growing up, it hung in the kitchen like a shrine. Mom updated it religiously, color-coding events by person. Emily had her own column. I had space when convenient. Emily was the golden child, blonde, bubbly, cheer captain. Mom called her our sunshine. I was 4 years older, quiet, academic, when I got accepted into Stanford. Mom wrote Rachel leaves in small letters on a sticky note. When Emily got into a local college, it was Emily starts new chapter in red Sharpie. Dad didn't interfere. He was present but passive, always nodding along with whatever Mom said. His silence hurt more than her dismissals. When I asked once why my name wasn't on the board, he just said, "You know your schedule better than anyone." They didn't need to forget me. Erasing was always intentional. Holidays were the hardest. Emily always got the best gifts, the prime seat at dinner, the biggest stocking. Mom insisted it wasn't favoritism, just thoughtfulness. I got practical gifts, socks, planners, gift cards. You're hard to shop for, she'd say. Every year when I moved out at 22, nothing changed. I still showed up for birthdays, for Thanksgivings, for Emily's engagements and promotions. I brought expensive wine, organized surprise parties, paid half the vacation costs. But my name never made the calendar. I started noticing a pattern. If I wasn't available to help, I disappeared. If I didn't RSVP fast enough, they assumed I wasn't coming. They never followed up. They never waited. They just moved on like I was optional. Emily's birthday was a 2-week event. Mine was often, "Oh, I thought you were working." One year I tested it. I said nothing, showed up unannounced. There was no cake, no card. Mom actually said, "Wait, is it today?" I nodded. She laughed. My absence didn't ruin the party. It made it easier. I kept it together for years. I told myself they didn't mean to exclude me, that they were busy, that they were just bad at communication. But deep down, I knew better. It wasn't about memory. It was about meaning. They didn't see me as the daughter who needed nurturing. They saw me as the one who handled things, the one who paid her own bills, fixed her own problems, never complained, the reliable one, the forgettable one. I started staying away more, turning down invites, working through holidays. But each time I visited, I scanned that calendar, hoping, stupidly, that this time I'd be there. This time, they'd write me in. They never did, until I wrote something they couldn't ignore. And I sent it with the date circled, bold and red. The red flags weren't always loud. They were soft, consistent, and cumulative, like drops of water wearing down stone. The first was when I was 15. I made honor roll. Mom nodded and said, "Well, you always were the studious one." When Emily got a B, they framed her report card. In senior year, I won a science scholarship. Mom wrote it in pencil at the bottom corner of the calendar, beneath Emily's dance recital. My achievement was squeezed into leftover space, a footnote in the life they celebrated. She never asked about my deadlines, my travels, my clients. But she always knew what time Emily's yoga class ended. Once, when I landed a huge promotion, I told her. She said, "That's nice, but have you heard about Emily's new boyfriend?" My success didn't threaten them, it just didn't interest them. Mom threw Emily a bridal shower with handmade centerpieces, monogram napkins, and 3 outfit changes. When I launched my consulting firm, she said, "Are you sure that's stable?" She didn't mention it again. Even after I hired 2 employees, the calendar became a mirror, not of time, but of value. When Emily's dog had a grooming appointment, it made the list. When I flew across the country to speak at a women's leadership summit, there was no note, not even a text. I offered to host Thanksgiving once. Mom said, "Let's keep it here, it's easier for everyone." But when Emily offered the same a year later, Mom packed her car that afternoon. When I asked if she'd join my business event one evening, she replied, "Is that the same night as Emily's fundraiser?" It wasn't, but the decision had already been made. She didn't weigh our invitations, she filtered them through favoritism. When I broke off an engagement, I called Mom crying. She said, "Maybe next time, don't be so picky." When Emily went through a 2-week breakup, Mom brought soup and stayed the night. I thought moving out would change things. It didn't. I was still the one expected to show up, pay, clean, understand. Emily could forget birthdays and still get celebrated. I remembered everything and still got erased. Even when I wrote myself onto the calendar, just once for a family dinner, I planned. She erased it and rewrote it under Emily's initials. "I thought you'd be okay with that," she said. The final straw wasn't one moment. It was 1,000 little moments that stacked up until they collapsed. I wasn't being overlooked, I was being removed. So I stopped waiting to be added in. I started drafting something of my own. It was the beginning of spring when it hit the hardest. I had just returned from a major pitch that landed my company a 6-figure deal. I texted Mom, hoping for some simple validation. "Great job," or even a thumbs up. She didn't reply. Later that day, I saw the family calendar update posted on Emily's Instagram. There it was, a photo of the calendar on the fridge, full of new dates. Easter brunch, Emily's baby shower planning night, Dad's retirement dinner, even Emily's dog's birthday was written in glitter pen. There was nothing about me, not even the pitch. Not even a mention of my return. It felt surgical, the way they removed me from their rhythm. I zoomed in on the photo. I wasn't imagining it. The calendar was a public document, shared online as if to confirm, "Rachel is not part of this." Not really. I showed it to a friend who said, "Maybe they just forgot," but I knew, I always knew. Because erasure has a pattern, it's not accidental. When it repeats for decades, they didn't forget me. They just wrote a version of life where I never mattered. The next week, Mom called to catch up. No mention of the calendar or the pitch. Or my silence. Just chatter about Emily's nursery wallpaper and how things are so busy lately. I said, "I noticed I'm not on the calendar." She paused, then replied, "Oh honey, you're always too busy for us anyway." That sentence cracked something inside me. She weaponized my independence, turned my hard-earned career into a reason to exclude me. My success wasn't something to be proud of, it was a convenient excuse. When I reminded her I'd be home that weekend, she said, "Oh, that's the weekend of Emily's rehearsal dinner. Maybe you can swing by after." I wasn't invited. I was an optional guest in my own family. I didn't argue. I just said, "Got it," and hung up. I sat in silence for an hour, staring at the invite-less weekend ahead. Then I opened my laptop. If they wouldn't put me on the calendar, I'd make one of my own. I had spent years building something real, a business that helped women step into leadership. I had clients, contracts, employees who respected me. I had just secured office space for our expansion. And that office space came with a conference room, perfect for our launch event. I picked a date, printed professional invitations, created a press release. I titled the event The Founders Table, then I printed one special invite. I addressed it to Sarah Thompson. No return address, just a white envelope with gold lettering. Inside was the event flyer with my name in bold. The event date, the exact same day as Emily's baby shower, one I wasn't invited to. I mailed the envelope without a word, no note, no explanation, just the event flyer with my name, the company I built, and the line, "You are formally invited to witness what you chose not to see." It felt both bold and fragile, like handing her the version of me she always refused to acknowledge. The days that followed were quiet, no response, no phone call. I didn't expect one, but part of me still checked my phone more often than usual. That same part, the little girl in me, still hoped for something, a crack, a shift, a sign she cared. Instead, I saw a new calendar post on Emily's feed. Final prep for baby shower, balloons. Checklist, family group texts printed and pinned to the fridge. Once again, I was nowhere, not even as an aunt, not even as an afterthought. I wasn't forgotten, I was filtered out. The ache that followed wasn't sharp, it was dull, lingering, like something you learn to live with but never fully carry. I called in sick the next morning, not because I was weak, but because I had finally felt everything I'd spent years trying to suppress. I stayed in bed until noon, didn't check emails, didn't brush my hair. I stared at the ceiling and let the silence press against me like a heavy blanket. There was no one to talk to about this kind of grief. It wasn't death. It was deletion. At lunch, I pulled out an old planner, the one I used in college when I still believed I could earn my mother's attention. The first page had a sticky note in Mom's handwriting: "Stay focused, you're not like Emily." I used to think that was motivation. Now, I knew it was warning. I reread journal entries I had written in margins, always trying to prove something, always chasing some version of inclusion that kept getting moved just out of reach. That night, I cried, not quietly, not composed. The kind of cry that sounds like release and grief all tangled together. I wasn't mourning my family. I was mourning the version of me that still thought she needed them to be whole. I wasn't breaking. I was shedding. By morning, I felt something new, space, like my chest had been cleared out, like I could breathe without negotiating for room. The silence was still there, but it belonged to me now. I made tea, I read a book. I didn't think about the baby shower. I didn't think about the calendar. I just thought about the next step, the room that would have my name on the door, because whether they came or not, I would be there. Present, unapologetic, and written in bold. The day of the launch arrived quietly, like most of my milestones. No fanfare, no family texts, just my team setting up chairs, arranging catering, and placing the programs I had designed myself. Each one had a gold embossed header, "The Founders Table." I stood in the empty room before guests arrived, running my fingers over the nameplate on the door. Rachel Thompson, founder and CEO. No glitter pen, no fridge magnet. Just truth, etched in acrylic, screwed into the wall. Impossible to erase. It hit me then. I had spent years hoping someone would finally write me into their narrative, but I had been writing my own all along. It just hadn't looked the way I expected. I was never missing, I was building. The guests began to arrive, clients, friends, mentors. Women I had helped hire and lift up. They smiled at me like I mattered, not because of my last name or family ties, but because of what I'd built with my own hands. Halfway through the event, I saw the unopened invitation still in my purse. The one I had mailed to Mom. I knew she wouldn't come, but I still checked the door once or twice. That part of me hadn't fully dissolved yet. Instead, I got a text from Emily, just one line: "Why would you schedule this today of all days?" No congratulations, no curiosity, just accusation. I didn't reply. There was nothing to defend. That text said more than she realized. It meant they had read the invitation. It meant they knew. It meant, for once, they had to see me. Even if they didn't come, they couldn't erase what I wrote in permanent ink. The speech I gave wasn't about revenge. It was about legacy. I spoke about leadership, resilience, visibility. I didn't mention my family, but I wore the dress I'd bought for Emily's wedding. The one I was told was too formal. For the family photo, afterward, a woman approached me in tears. "You made me feel seen," she said. I smiled, holding her hands in mine. I had no idea how much I needed someone to say that. In that moment, I realized the validation I had searched for wasn't missing. It had just never belonged where I was looking. It came from those I served, those who saw me, those who stayed, and maybe that was the greatest discovery of all, that being erased by them gave me the space to appear for myself. I didn't post photos from the event. I didn't brag. I didn't send a follow-up text. My silence wasn't about avoidance. It was the punctuation on a sentence I had finally finished. I no longer needed their approval. That was the revenge. Indifference. The next update to their calendar came a week later. Another photo on social media, spring schedule updated, and there it was again. Birthdays, brunches, baby milestones. But this time, something had changed. Under April 14th, in small writing, was a new entry: Rachel, business event, not launch, not founder's table, just a vague marker, but it was there. For the first time in years, my name had returned. They wrote me back in. But too late and too small. I didn't react. I didn't text anyone to acknowledge it. I printed the photo, taped it to my office wall, and added a sticky note under it: when they remember. I no longer need them to. I began scheduling quarterly events at the office. I started inviting women like me, overlooked, underestimated, erased. We called them invisible. No more gatherings. We didn't fix each other. We witnessed each other. My team grew. We outgrew the conference room and rented a co-working loft downtown. I ordered a new sign. This one didn't just say my name. It said Thompson Collective. They would see that name now in press releases, LinkedIn articles, podcast intros. Not in their fridge calendar, but in places that mattered to the world I chose to build. Emily messaged again. Why don't you ever come around anymore? I stared at it for a full minute before replying. I'm not on the schedule. They wanted my silence. I gave them my absence. Mom never called. But I got a forwarded email from a mutual family friend, a congratulatory message Mom had sent about my little company. Little, still minimizing, still indirect. I forwarded it to my assistant and said, frame this for the bathroom. She laughed. It went next to the toilet paper. Fitting, I thought. I didn't block them. I didn't ghost them. I just stopped bending. I let the invitations they never sent expire. I let their access to me fade. I didn't need them to be proud. I just needed to stop asking. Spring came again. 1 year later, the city bloomed in small, unapologetic ways. Wildflowers in sidewalk cracks, warm wind through office windows. Our team had grown from 5 to 20. And in that new building, there was no calendar on the fridge, just a glass board in the hallway, filled with goals, dreams, and yes, names. One afternoon, my assistant asked if I wanted to schedule a Founder's Day to honor the launch anniversary. I paused, then smiled. Yes, I said, put it in red, make it bold. I wanted to see it there, visible, anchored, unerasable. On that day, we had cupcakes, nothing fancy, no speeches, but someone handed me a box, small, gold-trimmed, tied with string. I opened it and found a photo. Me standing in front of our first conference room, laughing, radiant. Taped beside it was a calendar square, April 14th, circled in red. The day they finally wrote me off was the day I wrote myself in. I kept that box. I placed it on my desk, next to my nameplate. It replaced every birthday they forgot, every dinner I wasn't invited to, every moment I was left off the board. A few weeks later, I got a wedding invitation. Emily's, no phone call. No, we'd love to see you, just cardstock with pastel florals and a return envelope. I held it in my hand and felt nothing. I placed it beside the calendar printout I had framed, the one where they finally wrote my name. I whispered, too late, and slipped both into a drawer I rarely open. The final event of that quarter was a panel I moderated, How to Reclaim Your Narrative. My name was printed at the top. I looked out into a room full of women, all once erased, now lit from within. I didn't cry, I didn't shake, I just stood there and spoke. I ended with the words I had once written in a journal: they can't write your story if you take the pen. She gave the calendar meaning, I gave it closure. That night, I walked home alone, no calls, no family chat lighting up my phone, but I didn't feel alone. I felt chosen, by myself. I had built a world where I wasn't optional. I passed a bookstore, saw a calendar in the window, and laughed. All those years I waited to be included, and now, I wouldn't fit in their boxes even if they begged me to. At home, I lit a candle, opened a fresh planner, and wrote one thing on the First page, make room for yourself, and I circled the date in red.